Hello, this is going to be week 26 honors homework. So I'll go ahead and start to show us some of the way that some of these different problems work here. Alright, now, so for the fractions section, otherwise this is just solving equations and we're just fine at that. But for the fractions, to get rid of a fraction, we multiply by the reciprocal. Alright, now what that means, the reciprocal is just the same fraction except the opposite. Right, and so we looked at this one here in class. But to take a look at this one here, if I wanted to get rid of this negative 6 over 5, right, because I'm trying to solve for k, we're going to want to multiply both sides by the reciprocal, which is a 5 over 6. All right, now don't forget, because there is a negative sign here, we're also going to want to get rid of that. I'm also going to want to put a negative with our 5 over 6. Okay? All right, so the reason we multiply by the reciprocal is because it's the opposite, right? So this 5 over 6 and this 6 over 5 are going to cancel out, and the negatives will cancel out as well. Right? So all that cancels out, leaving us left over with a k is equal to. Now we have to simplify this part. So we multiply fractions straight across. So 12 times the negative 5 is going to give us a negative 60. And then 1 times the 6 will give us a 6. And negative 60 divided by 6 tells us that negative 10 is going to be our answer here. Right, so that's how we deal with those fractions. We multiply by the reciprocal. For page 2 here, solving equation maze. Right, so what we'll have to do here is we'll just start solving the equations, and when you find your answer, you move on to the next one, and eventually you should get to the ending. So for example, we'd solve this first one by subtracting 10 from both sides. And then when we divide both sides by 4, we get that x is equal to a negative 9 here. Alright, so what that's telling us to do is we're going to travel along this path, right? And then we'll get to solve this next one, right? So as you continue to solve, you may go up and down and all around as you are solving these equations and going through this maze here. Let's keep that in mind. So find the right answer, and that's one way to double check. If you don't get any of the answer choices, you know that you have made a mistake. Alright, adding fractions is all about the common denominator. Right, what that means is the bottom part of our fractions, the denominators have to be the exact same. Right, so let's take a look. Let's just try number 4 here. So I'm looking at the 4 and the 3. I know that they're not the same. They're not the common denominator, but the number that I'm going to be able to multiply together to get these to be easiest is a 12. Right, so we're looking for our least common denominator. So to get that, this fraction I'm going to multiply. I know I need to multiply the bottom by a 3 to get it to be a 12. Because I also need to multiply the numerator by 3 because 3 divided by 3 is really just a 1. And on this side, to get this 3 to be 12, we're going to multiply it by a 4 over 4. Right? Let me figure out what these two fractions are now. 3 times 3 gives us a 9. 3 times 4 gives us a 12. Right? The 2 times, so I'm going to add it together with 2 times 4 gives us an 8. 3 times the 4 gives us a 12. Now, when I add fractions, we only add the numerator. So this is going to give us a 17 over 12. Now, will I turn this into a mixed number? No, do not. Leave it right. Okay. Now, subtracting fractions is essentially the same thing. We are still looking for that common denominator. Except now, instead of adding on that last step, we'll do some subtracting. Now, sometimes we're able to only change one of the denominators to make it equal the other, and let me show us what I mean by that. I could look at this 4 and 2 and realize that I could multiply to both get an 8, but here on this one, I can actually bring this 2 up to the 4. I'm multiplying here by a 2 over 2. Alright? So this 3 over 4, I'm going to leave it the same because I only need to change this one. 1 times 2 gives me a 2. 2 times 2 gives me a 4. Alright, so notice how we only had to change this one piece. So now 3 minus the 2 is going to give me a 1. We've got our 1. So the only time this answer will change is if we can simplify it. Right? If our final answer would have been like a 2 over 4, I could have changed it to a 1/2. So keep that in mind. You will need to do some simplifying sometimes on some of these answers. Alright, so here we go on week 26, page 5. Make sure we're showing our steps, right? We must show our steps. So here's what it means to factor these trinomials here, alright? So to factor, that means we're trying to split it up into our two different parentheses and then solve for our solutions. Alright, so I'm looking at this one. I'm thinking what numbers multiply by each other to get me a 32 and also add to give me a 12. And I don't have to worry about numbers out front because it's just an x squared. I need an x and an x here. Right, and so this would be a positive 8 and a positive 4. Right, so now to solve for solutions, right, what are we going to have to do? We're going to take both of these pieces and set them up equal to a 0. Right, because factoring is not enough. We also have to solve. This is just easy one steps. That's what subtract, right? 8 from both sides. You can get that one of our x's is equal to a. Right? Here we'll subtract a 4 on both sides, and we'll get that our x is equal to a negative 4. Right? So here's what it looks like to show our work. Now when we're factoring these easier type, you can go straight to your factoring, that's fine, but do show your work on solving for your zeros. Alright? Now for this section here, solve by completing the square. We're definitely going to need to show our work on these. Alright, so let's go through and we'll just take a look at we'll do this first one. Why not? So what we're trying to do is figure out what can we do to make this side be a perfect square. You see it's not right now because negative 50 is not a perfect square. Alright? Now, here's going to be the issue with this, is that we're going to run into a fraction. This is one of the reasons that I wanted to look at these, and the other ones will work out fine, but this one doesn't because we're going to get a fraction. Now, when I'm going to find out what number goes right here, the formula to help us find this is r negative b, sorry, this is b divided by 2 squared, right? So now for us, we're going to run into an issue here, because when we take this negative 5 and we divide it by 2, we're going to get a fraction. Right, and I'm still going to square it and follow through our steps here as normal. And this just shows us that sometimes completing a square does get a little bit messy here for us, but our video will help us get through that. So if I have a negative 5 squared, the next it's going to be a negative 5 over 2 negative 5 over 2. Alright, so when we do this, the number that we'll be adding to both sides is going to be a positive 25 over 4. Alright, and so then also on this side, we're going to have to add a positive 25 over 4 here. All right. Now we can already see of why this is going to get super messy, but I'm going to go ahead and take us through this so we can kind of see it. Oh, how do we deal with these fractions? All right. Now, if I'm going to factor this, it's just going to be this. So I'm going to have an x. Now, and these pieces tell us what go with our x. So it's going to be a minus 5 over 2. Now I have two of those, right? So we can think about this as x minus 5 over 2 and another x minus 5 over 2. And we're equal to. Now, when I add these up, I'd have to get some common denominators. So feel free to pause and take an opportunity to add 50 and a 25 over 4. But what we will get on that is this. All right, if we were to simplify all of it out, we get 225 over 4. All right, so now what we're going to have to do is this. We can simplify this to an x minus 5 over 2 squared. All right, and we're still equal to that same number there. All right. Now, what do we do to finish solving these each time? Well, it's always taking the square root of both sides. Right, so that's what we're going to do. And I'm actually going to work on a separate piece of paper here. All right, so let's continue on here with what we got. When I square root both sides, we'll get that we have an x minus 5 over 2 is equal to, and then we need the square root of this number right here. Now, luckily, they are both perfect squares. So when I take the square root of 225, what we will get is a 15. All right, when I take the square root of the 4, what we will get is a 2. All right. So we also can't forget that we have our plus or minus here. All right. So now when we go back to find our answer, here's how we can do it. We can split this up into two different cases. I'll have an x minus 5 over 2, positive 15 over 2. And I'll also have an x minus 5 over 2 is equal to a negative 15 over 2. All right. So now let's finish this up just like as any other equation. I have to add a 5 over 2 to both sides. All right. So these are opposites. They'll cross off. So one of our x's is going to be equal to, well, think about it. 15 over 2 plus a 5 over 2. They already have the same common denominators. 15 plus 5 is a 20. So we have a 20 over 2, right? 15 plus the 5 gives us a 20. 20 divided by 2 tells us that one of our answers is going to be a 10. Now for this one, negative 15 plus a 5 gives me a negative 10. So x is equal to a negative 10 divided by 2, which would tell us that our x here is equal to a negative 5, right? So completing the square when we run into fractions is obviously super difficult. It's got a lot of steps to it, and they're a little challenging, right? And that's why we have a variety of solving methods, right? If we only had completing the square, this process would be rough. We actually could have factored this one if that's what the directions asked us to do, but it didn't. Well, so the other one took except look out for here, right? This was going to be a challenge. All right, see if you can get it to work out, right? You can double check and know what the answers are from factoring, right? You may factor to do that, and then have that to double check your answer. But try to complete the square. Deal with the fractions and see if you can make it through. Obviously, it's a complicated process here. So my answers are this one where x is equal to a 10, and x is equal to a negative. All right, great. So that handles that. The rest of them should all work out just fine for you. Okay. And that's a little bit of a hint. Check out because sometimes completing the square is already done for us. Here's a little hint for us. Right? Sometimes that's going to happen. It's already ready. Right? So then continue on to solve it from there. Right? And try the rest as well. Now for us here, I'll continue to just show your steps. Right? So what we have to do is to get this one factored, we have to use our table maybe to help us out. All right, so we'll check for a GCF. I don't see any. There's no number I can divide all of these. So here's how we get this factor. And I'm going to pause for the video's sake. All right, so we're looking for numbers that multiply together to give us 15, numbers that multiply together to give us 40. And then we're trying to find the combination. All right, and here is going to be that combination. If I do a 5 multiplied by 5, that's going to get us a 25. And 3 multiplied by 8 is going to get us a 24. 25 plus 24 does give us the 49. So that tells us how to set up our factor. All right, so I need a 3x and a 5x. All right, that's for those numbers there. And then the 3 has to be opposite of the 8. And the 5 has to be opposite of the 5. All right, so that's our factorization. Now what we can do is take both of these, set them up equal to a 0. And solve them both out. Right, so we subtract 5, divide both sides by the 3, to get that one of ours is going to be a negative 5 over 3. Right, and on this one, we'd subtract an 8, divide both sides by the 5 to get a negative 8 divided by a 5 there. Right, and that's the way that works. So you can see that it takes some work to solve these out, but be willing to do that. Now these here, this is solved using the quadratic formula, to where we need to know what those A, B, and C values are, and use the formula to help us out. All right, and so we'll be seeing some of these in class. I'll pause the video and kind of show us the setup on these here, because I'm almost out of time. It gets capped off at 15 minutes. Now, when I use that quadratic formula, I have our negative b plus or minus our b squared minus 4ac all times 2a. We see this here. Now let's take a look and see how we can simplify it. All right, so when we finish simplifying this, right, we found out everything underneath the square root. Then we took the square root of it, and we have 16 plus or minus 34 divided by 10, and we split it up into the two different cases. Maybe later on in the week, depending on how these quadratic formula ones are going, I might show us another one of these two to really see how all these different steps come into play here.